Good evening, everyone. I declare the ordinary council meeting open at 1800. Good evening, councillors, staff, ladies and gentlemen. We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on, the Whadjuk people. We would like to pay respect to the elders of the Noongar Nation, past and present, who have walked and cared for the land, and we acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contributions made to the life of this city and this region, and I invite you to bow your head in prayer. Lord, we ask for your blessing upon our city, our community and our council. Guide us in decision-making to act fairly, without fear or favour, and with compassion, integrity and honesty. May we show true leadership, be inclusive of all, and guide the city of Wanneroo to a prosperous future that all may share. We ask this in your name. Amen. Amen. Please note that the audio proceedings of tonight's meeting will be live broadcast online, with the exception of matters discussed behind closed doors. That broadcast will remain available via the City of Wanneroo website following the conclusion of the meeting. Attendances are as per the record. We have apologies, leave of absence from Councillor Berry, and we have an apology from Councillor Vin Ewan and Councillor Jacqueline Huntley. Public question and statement time. The following general rules apply to public question and statement time. Public questions and statements should only relate to the business of the local government and should not be a personal statement or opinion. Only questions relating to matters affecting the local government will be considered at a council meeting, and only questions that relate to the purpose of the meeting will be considered at a special council meeting. Questions may be taken on notice and responded to after the meeting. Questions may not be directed at specific council members or a city employee, and questions are not to be framed in such a way as to reflect adversely on a particular council member or city employee. First priority will be given to persons who are asking questions relating to items on the current council meeting agenda, and second priority will be given to public statements. Only public statements regarding items on the council agenda under consideration will be heard, and each person seeking to ask questions or make a statement may address council for a maximum of 3 minutes each. So we have first person, we've got Mr. John Ellison. If you'd like to come down and ask your question on AS01. Is John here tonight? All right, and we've also got a question on PQ01 1022 by Mrs. Dot Newton. Dot, do you want to come down and ask a question?
Good evening, Mayor and Councillors. Before I ask my questions, I would like to pass on a compliment that I pick up very regularly for our Parks Department. They would like to thank the Parks people for the everlastings that are around the city. They actually bring a smile to most people's faces in the morning, as they do mine, so please pass those thanks on. I've been advised that the signage local law report has been withdrawn. However, I would like to ask a question on it, because it's bound to come back at some stage. The first question is Council aware that Main Roads have rewritten their conditions for election material? It occurred in May this year, and it's quite eye-opening. They're saying they're going to allow signage, but there's a lot of restrictions, and one of the main ones is nobody's allowed to use star pickets. My question on the report that's been withdrawn was, we had a local law which is going to be repealed and replaced by planning, but we had a local law but it wasn't policed, so that concerns me. Moving it from Peter to Paul, is it still going to be the same? Are we going to ignore these fines? I listened to the briefing last week, and the business community were referred to as they would come under the same local law, but they don't post them on the verges or around the city or on chain link fencing. So I don't see the thingy there, so I'd like that to be looked at. 45 of them got warned about signs in the last year or so, so somebody does look at theirs. My question on CPO2, I did give out a little thing I prepared because it worried me when I read that report. Opportunity Play Space is located in Rotary Park. It was 2008-9 budget year and it was in the annual report and it was such a well-received facility, and the fort there was designed to allow a young person in a wheelchair to experience going into the tree canopy. So if anybody's looking at making alterations there, I hope they're not going to actually stop that occurring. But the biggest problem is that park and the access to it floods regularly. I did provide some photos taken by my husband. And it's not just in the winter. If you have a heavy rain anytime, it floods in the same places. I was amused to see poor council staff trying to slash the verges at the side of that path from the rec centre, and I don't know how they didn't get bogged personally. So can we look at spending some money on that before we start altering all the playground equipment down there? If it's rusting, that's probably why, some of it. Also, when you go out to public comment, can we make a point of inviting Burbridge School to put in a submission? That school was heavily involved in the initial design of that park and gave their thing, and they used to bring their bus there and they had a key to the Liberty Swing when that was in place. Unfortunately, that was removed, but they made a point of using that park when the other children were in schools.
Thank you, Mrs Newton. I'll just put some of these questions through to the Director of Infrastructure just to answer them, and then you can progress with your further questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The groundwater issue is, we know about that issue in that location, as the area is very close to the lake. We will definitely, as part of the design of the renewal of this facility, will reconsider that one, what needs to be done to manage the drainage issue there.
Thank you. There is a drain at the back of the Wanneroo Recreation Centre on the bank between the trees there that always has water in, even in the summer, and it's not coming from the lake. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's not coming from the lake. So maybe start there and work your way around. I have a question on the, well, not a question, it is a question, I'll have to rephrase this. Neerabup Industrial Park. I did read the report. I know we've been planning to sell these lots for many years and the limestone is being extracted. But I want council to guarantee the promised employment opportunities that relate to those lots. We've been telling the community for years now, it's going to be 20,000 jobs out there, you won't have to get on the freeway every morning, blah, blah, blah. If we sell all those lots, we've got no guarantee of that occurring. As a city, to retain some of those lots, the larger lots if necessary, so that you can control the businesses that go in there, so that there is a business that's going to employ more than 1 or 2 people, which is what's happened in Wangara. That's half those places have only got half a dozen employees apart from the car yards.
Thank you, Mrs Newton. Mr Marmion, would you like to address how we're managing this situation? Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Aitken. Yes, lot 9100, it's only 16 hectares of the 132 hectares that the city owns. And the proposal is for 41 lots, so it is quite an intensive development. So I would assume that the employment outcomes will actually be quite good. We are able to also put conditions on the sale of those lots, so I would envisage that in the future when we go to sale that we would put those conditions on so we can determine the types of uses that would enable that employment outcome to be reached.
Thank you, Mrs Newton. Have you got more questions?
I was only going to ask if you'd thought about leasing properties. I know you're going to get rates whether you lease them or not, but the fees from the leases could be isolated to cover surrounding infrastructure up there, because it looks great when it all starts and then later on, like Landcorp's land is, you know, a bit of a mess up there in places. So I just wondered if that had been taken into consideration. I really feel that now Neerabup comes from the freeway, the idea of working there you know, will appeal to a lot of people. But if we're going to let businesses go in there that just employ their families, we're not going to achieve anything as a council.
Thank you, Mrs Newton. Mr Marmion, would you like to respond to that? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Aitken, yes, thank you for the question. The business plan does actually include the opportunity for leasing. However, as part of when we eventually do go out to it might be an expression of interest or to sale or to lease, at that point we'll know what the market actually demand for that is. So we're just a bit concerned that the market demand for lease may not be as high as we probably originally did, but there is still the option in the business plan to lease land on lot 9100.
Thank you. I appreciate your response.
Thank you, Mrs Newton. I've got Mr Pope on the list to ask questions. Is Mr Pope here? No, we'll move on to item 4, the confirmation of minutes. I might move that on block. The minutes of the ordinary council meeting and the special council meeting. Thank you, Councillor Civic. And who will second it? Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Sorry. Yes, please. And if there's no one against it, we'll move it across. Thank you. Item 5. I'm not choking, no. Item 5, announcements. Oh, will we vote for that, please? Okay, there we go. Everyone like to vote? Sorry.
Excuse me, I've got my name down for a question.
I did ask if Mr Pope was coming. Are you Mr Pope? I didn't see that on the list, but we'll finish this vote and then you can come down and ask a question, okay? Thank you. And how was that? And that's passed unanimously. Thank you. And Mr Burnett, would you like to come down and ask your questions? Thank you.
Russell Burnett, 144 Emerald Drive, Carabooda. Evening, Mayor and councillors and staff. I have questions. I framed it as questions for the councillors, and the question is: are councillors aware of the consultation process undertaken for the Lake Joondalup Park change rooms and toilet upgrades project in 2019? Being that this was activated by the City Active Reserve Master Plan. There was 8 comments on that park. 1 asked for change rooms. We found out about the work.
Mr Barnett, can we just do question by question, and I'll just pass this through to Ms Terrelling. Thank you.
These are all, the questions are all contained in that. It's one big question. So if I can continue, it's the process I'm talking about, where the councillors were aware of it. We become aware of it, and consultations started after we made inquiries. The design was completed without consultation, went out to tender during the consultation period. Consultation period closed after the close of tender, and basically you'd have to start work on your tender recommendations while consultation was happening. It was pointed out as part of the consultation process that the change rooms had not been addressed, and if
Mr
staff
Barnett, what is your question, and then bring the information?
I'm asking if the councillors are aware of this consultation process that took place, which I'm outlining.
Okay.
So the question is,
Mr Barnett,
Burnett, thank you.
Burnett, I will pass it on to Debbie Terrelink, and she will discuss the consultation process for this. Thank you.
No, sorry, I'm asking the
Sorry,
council.
Mr Burnett, I have said what I'm doing. You might add to your question further, but we are going straight to the director responsible for the community consultation. Thank you.
Okay, the next question.
Sorry, Mr Burnett, we're going straight to the director, and then you can continue. Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor. So I do recall that there was a consultation process undertaken. There was a project through the Active Reserve Master Plan to do some work to that particular facility. We did do a process of community consultation, and we then met with the clubs and also with Mr Burnett, where it was indicated that the clubs didn't feel that the project was needed in terms of the fact that the clubs wouldn't use the facility. As a result of that, I understand we did a minor upgrade to the facilities. However, we didn't progress with the larger planned project as a result of the feedback from the users of the facility and also from Mr Burnett.
Thank you, Ms Terrelink. Could you advise when you've last had conversation with the football clubs about this facility?
Through you, Mayor, from memory, it may have been 2 to 3 years ago.
Mayor, can I just ask for some clarification, please?
Yep.
Mr Burnett's talking about Joondalup toilet block. You were referring to the footy. So what toilet block are we talking about?
Mr Burnett, can you clarify what you're talking about?
It was a package that council put out. It was the Lake Joondalup Park change rooms and toilet upgrade.
Through
Ms
you, Mayor,
Terrelink, can you
that's-
clarify about that, please?
Through you, Mayor, that's the facility that's located at Scenic Park at Lake Joondalup.
If you could continue now.
Okay, don't know if it's to Debbie or to councillors. Councillors are aware that the staff closed down consultation on that because we said you're not fixing the change rooms, which are the problem. We then had to go above the staff to go to Debbie to get the project stopped. And just want to make sure that council are aware that volunteers had to fight to stop council wasting $660,000 on that project. Okay, next question.
Ms Terrelink, would you like to comment on that?
Through you, Mayor, yes, I can confirm that I met with Mr Burnett and the presidents of the club, and based on that feedback, we did do a scaled-back version of the project, and I understand the Capital Works program was amended accordingly.
Thank you, Mr Burnett. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, council is aware that there's a renewable energy grant that a sporting club has got. An MOU has been signed with the City of Wanneroo, and the content of that MOU is that look at investigating to enter into an agreement to buy surplus power from that club and to reduce the city's carbon footprint, and should act in good faith and use reasonable endeavours. The cost benefits, which have not been outlined by council, is reduced carbon footprint, cheaper power cost to council, pay 4 sporting clubs, non-profit groups, for that power instead of Western Power. All of these at no cost to council, yet staff have come up and said no, based on a consultant's advice, which did not know the power cost to council at that time, and did not know, was not aware, did not make any mention of the upgrade from the grant in regards to batteries and additional panels.
Thank you, Mr Burnett. Ms Terrelink, were you aware of this, or Mr Singh? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not fully across all the details. I do know a consultant report has been prepared, so I'll have to take this question on notice and provide a response.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Mr Burnett.
A council's aware that the new facility that you built in 2020 at Edgar Griffiths Reserve, which is the new change rooms, costs the ratepayers $1.65 million, is not fit for purpose. I went down there the other day.
Just a moment, can I just ask Ms Terrelink, can you respond to that building not being fit for purpose, please?
Yes, through you, Mayor. I understand there may have previously been some concerns raised. However, we've had further conversations with the clubs that use that particular facility, and while they have a couple of issues, it's not related to the actual building itself. It's more related to the the lux of the lighting at the Oval. There's also some issues, I believe, with parking as well, but we certainly haven't had any feedback from the clubs who use the facility that the facility itself is not fit for purpose.
And I'd just like to further add, Mr Burnett, that the CEO and I are meeting the presidents in the near future about the facilities for these groups, okay? If you'd like to continue, thank you.
Yes, I'm aware of that meet and greet. When I say it's unfit for purpose, I went in there and there was 4 players had to sit on the concrete floor because there was not enough seats. It's Australian rules football. Council should be aware that junior football and women's football have 25 players. So if you can imagine 7 women, some of those being mothers, having to sit on a wet concrete floor because your staff designed a change room facility that's not suitable for its purpose.
Ms Terrelink, has the club formally expressed any concerns about lack of seating within the change rooms?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, I understand from the staff who have met with the clubs that they haven't expressed that as a concern. As I've indicated, they have expressed a couple of other concerns about Edgar Griffiths Park, but that's not to do with the building, so I'm not aware of those concerns being raised.
Thank you, Ms Terrelink. Mr Burnett.
Question, has the staff been down there, ever inspected a change room facility or any other facility they built, go in, take notes of how it's used, what's in there, and then use that to prepare a proper template that addresses all the issues? Because even though it may not have been raised, think about it, 7 women have to sit on a wet concrete floor because it's not designed properly. This should be bread and butter.
Mr Burnett, we have responded to that. They have not complained about it, but we do community consultation and we do follow through. We consult with the user groups and we do that repeatedly. Ms Terrelink, would you like to make comment?
Thank you, Mayor. When we do design these facilities as well, we consider the standards that are provided by the sporting associations, so the state sporting associations, and certainly wherever possible, particularly with new facilities, we ensure that we meet the standards that are required by the state sporting associations.
Thank you, Ms Terrelink. Mr Burnett?
Your staff have previously advised that they use the AFL guidelines. The AFL guidelines say the dry area should be 55 square metres, and I suggest that you're nowhere near that in regards to Edgar Griffiths, and what you're proposing at Lake Joondalup Oval was 12 square metres.
Ms Terrelink, do you have a response to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I've indicated, wherever possible, we certainly meet the requirements of the state sporting associations. There may be particular occasions, there may be other restrictions in terms of the resources that are available, and also whether it's senior or junior use, or whether, particularly if it's existing facilities, whether there's also the capability of expanding the footprint. So while we certainly make every endeavour to meet the standards that are provided, there could, and on occasion, be restrictions that mean that we don't completely comply with those, but in that we would have that conversation with the user groups at the time if that was the case.
Thank you, Ms Terrelink. Mr Burnett, you've had 8 minutes and you're allowed 5 minutes for public question time. I wish to advise that I'll be meeting with the user groups. We'll be meeting and we'll be discussing any issues they bring up with us at the time. Thank you very much for coming to the city and expressing your concerns.
Okay, just want to finish off. If any councillors, I've got a whole list of other issues.
You can send them by email, Mr Burnett, and our staff will look at them. Thank you, Mr Burnett. Okay, so we've done confirmation of minutes and we're up to acknowledging the LG Pro National Challenge winning team. It gives me great pleasure in congratulating Team Wanneroo Kura Yaya Miller, who took it out the 2022 LG Professionals Australasian Management Challenge held in August 2022. The team also won the Best Risk Task Award during the challenge. The team represented Western Australia in the national competition in Adelaide, competing against state winners from around Australia and New Zealand. The challenge required teams to navigate through a range of complex tasks and scenarios in a pressure cooker environment, and the team Wanneroo Kura Yaya Miller were commended for their teamwork, energy, effectiveness and creative thinking. The city is extremely proud of Simon Gray from Cultural Development Amber Croker from Waste Services, Molly Ferreira from Communications and Brand, Sally Carricher from Advocacy and Economic Development, Sarah McCulloch from Asset Maintenance, Catherine Chick, Customer and Information Services, and the reserve member Shantae Arthur from Community Development. They have all worked very hard and have given a lot of their time in the lead up to the challenge and are very deserving winners. I'd also like to congratulate Director of Assets Harminder Singh, who mentored the team. With such incredible leadership talent within the team, I believe the future of the City of Wanneroo is very bright. I now invite the members of the winning team, Simon, Amber, Sarah, Catherine, and Sarah again, I've got Sarah twice, and the team mentor, Harminder, to come forward and receive the trophy. And I have another special commendation. Councillor Sangeli and Director Assets Manager Harminder Singh attended the presentation of the 2022 Western Australian Coastal Awards for Excellence held at Hotel Siebel in Mandurah on the 19th of September this year. These awards recognise outstanding efforts and work undertaken by local governments, community groups, state government agencies, schools, individuals and non-government organisations to enhance, rehabilitate and adapt to threats and pressures to the WA coast. I am pleased to announce that one of the city's projects, Quinns Beach Long-Term Coastal Management, was awarded a special commendation under Coastal Management and Adaptation category. After seeing the calibre of projects nominated for these awards, it's a matter of pride that our project received this acknowledgement at a state level. This is an excellent outcome for the city, demonstrating our commitment to working in collaboration with the community, Department of Transport, our consultants and contractors. Please join me in congratulating all our team members involved in this project, and I now invite the Director of Assets, Mr Singh, to come forward and receive the commendation certificate. It's always fun celebrating good achievements within the city. Item 6, questions from council members. Are there any questions from council members? Yes, Councillor. Said Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is without notice, so I'll word it in a way that's not unfair for administration. It's about bus shelters in Girraween again. So at the last Ordinary Council meeting, we voted to approve the reinstallation of those bus shelters, and I recall the conversation at the time being that every effort would be to endeavour they were reinstalled by the end of September. As we now approach the middle of October, they're yet to be reinstalled. So would administration please look into whether there is a reason for that, if it's due to contractor delay or alternatively the road resurfacing works that are currently being undertaken on Blackmore?
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Mr Singh, can you respond to that, please?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'll get the team to get in touch with PTA to get an update why there is a delay, and I can update council members.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got two questions for tonight. I'll start off with my first one. Who owns the land and building of the Wanneroo Sports and Social Club to ensure this information is publicly available, as there is general confusion for some members and the community, including myself?
Thank you. Ms Jennings.
Thank you, Mayor. The land that is Crown land, but it's managed by the city under a management order for the purposes of club and club premises. The building is owned by the city, and there's a lease that is involved with who maintains what part of it. So the structural items are the responsibility of the city, the rest is with the lessee. So I think that answers all the questions. So.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. My second question, I'd also like to ask if administration has considered putting together any projects or upgrades, including the parking or lighting for Edgar Griffiths Park, considering tonight's questions that we've been asked.
Thank you. Ms Terrelank.
Thank you, Mayor. I am aware that Councillor Wright has actually asked that these be considered as part of the 2023-24 budget. We are doing some preliminary work, however, to understand the cost, particularly around the lighting, to see whether there is any possibility of doing the work sooner, but they certainly will be listed for consideration for the 23-24 budget.
Thank you, Ms Terrelank. Is that everything? Thank you. Okay, we're on to new petitions received. We've got a petition supporting the installation of the 3x3 basketball hoop and pad in Longford Park Dash, and it's received from Councillor Herridge. Who would like to second it, by the way? Councillor Rowe.
Cool, thank you, Mayor. The 58 signatory petition is to support the installation of the 3x3 basketball pad at Longford Park Darch. Just to read what the petition has fully, residents understood the project was already approved from the 2019 consultation, and the letter recently received did not indicate that this was not the case. Had they understood the basketball pad may not have gone ahead, they would have provided more feedback sooner. Thank you.
Just take a vote on the petition now. Thank you. Do we have any more petitions? Yeah, and so that's carried unanimously. Any declarations of interest by council members, including the nature and extent of interest, are to be made at the commencement of the item to which the interest relates. Declaration of interest forms are to be completed and handed to the Chief Executive Officer. We're going to reports. Have we got another petition? Who's got another petition? Oh, Councillor Sangelli, you have another petition? No. No, they're all done. They're taken care of. Okay, yes, Deputy Mayor Treby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a procedural motion, just requesting Council consider a procedural motion to bring item PSO 7 1022, which is the consideration of the development application for modification to existing place of worship in tonight's agenda to the front of the agenda.
Do we have a seconder for this? Thank you, Councillor Savitten. If you can just set the vote up for the procedural motion, guys. If everyone could cast their vote, please. It's not there. And that's passed unanimously. So we'll go to item PSO That is moved by Councillor Treby and seconded by Councillor Rowe. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Treby? Mayor Treby, Deputy.
At least it's not Mr. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm particularly pleased to have the opportunity to move this item, councillors. The temple in its current form has been operating for many, many years, several decades in fact. It is a good neighbour. It is a good member of the community. It does not attract negative behaviour. And what's proposed tonight is no change whatsoever in the operations of what they do at that location, simply the form of one of the buildings. The Kaudai Temple and the organisation that runs it is well known to the community, though very, very peaceful, vegetarian by nature, and thoroughly deserving of our support. It's notable and noteworthy that they have worked extensively with administration to modify and accommodate all of the changes that have been requested by administration, such to the extent that administration now support this application. It's also noteworthy, and I think I'm correct in stating this, that this will be the second building of its nature in Australia, and we will be fortunate to have one of those in Girraween, which features many, many members of the Vietnamese community and also of this faith. And I have no hesitation in supporting the application, and I ask all councillors to give it your full support.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Treby. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Only to reiterate the comments that have already been made by the Deputy Mayor, the fact that this place of worship has a long entrenched history in the suburb, that the members of the place of worship have worked extensively with the administration to come up with and to revise a structure that will limit any impact on neighbouring residents in terms of the fact that the tower structures will not be inhabitable, the fact that they have made efforts to reduce the setbacks. There will be efforts in terms of how often the group will be meeting at the place of worship. It has a good relationship with the existing residents in the near vicinity, and something that I asked last week that was confirmed on the record, there have been no complaints ever made about traffic congestion or noise emanating from the facility itself. I think those facts, along with the fact that the place of worship has a good relationship within the community, reflects all the reasons why I will be supporting this report tonight, and obviously encourage my fellow councillors to please join the Deputy Mayor and I in supporting this item.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Are there any speakers against? Speakers for? Okay, I'll put it to a vote. It's carried 9-2. Councillor Herridge and Councillor Wright voted against it. Thank you. You may go now. Your item is finished. Go home and enjoy a cup of tea or something. Bless you guys. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for that. Bye-bye. Okay, we're moving on to item 8, or back to item 8, planning and sustainabilities, and I'm hoping to move PSO 1 to PSO 5 en bloc. Who wants to speak to any of these items? Yes, Councillor Miles? Well, you said you didn't want to move them en bloc. I thought you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, no, I wish to comment on the urban forest and on the East Wanneroo cells, developer cells.
Okay. So we'll move item PSO1, talking about the urban forest strategy. Who would like to move that? Councillor Wright, Councillor Civic, second it. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. Urban forest strategy is a fantastic strategy and really showcases what our city is aiming to do over the next, not even the next couple of years, on decades to come, and it will affect every ward regardless of where you live in the city. And I think that's a really good thing, and to be able to have that available on the city's website with these really good fact sheets that will be coming for the public to view, they'll be able to identify if they live in a hotspot in the suburb and then be able to take action from that, whether they want to request a verge tree on their property, but also work with the community and work with the local environmental groups to be able to create greener suburbs in the city. So I 100% support and encourage this strategy, and it is good work both of council, administration and the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Civic.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Look, I certainly endorse the recommendation here. It is very important that, especially in times like these where the residential densities are going to increase, we have to look at making sure that we do plant trees in these higher density areas. And when you look at the heat maps of the city going back 20, 30 years ago, when there was a large denuding of the landscape for horticultural and or grazing purposes within the city, especially along the Mindari up to Eglinton areas where the pastoral companies did graze sheep, etc., and cattle. It is very important in the context of things, and one thing I have noticed is that within Yallagongga Regional Park, obviously being a regional park, the amount of tree planting that is actually taking place now is a real credit to Department of Calm or whoever's actually operating the resurrection of Yallagongga. But if we can have this in line with our urban tree strategy, I think this is going to benefit everyone. And when you look at the inner city areas now, where the large residential blocks, which had really good tree cover, are now being recoded and actually subdivided and developed, we need to maintain that within the city of Perth as well. But for Wanneroo, it is very important for our future to make sure that we stay in tune with the environment. So I'm happy to second this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Speakers for? Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, I'm very supportive of the tree canopy that we are agreeing to tonight, and also with the consultation that went out, 42 days of consultation. I read those submitters' comments. Administration have articulated them quite well within the report, so if anybody hasn't read the report, they will get some good information. Obviously, you have to have a target. You have to attempt to get to a target first. I was very keen to understand through administration's work, through our planning department, in establishing where those hot zones are or where those heat zones can be, and how they are going to be tackled, obviously, by our Director of Assets area of planting. 3,000 trees are going to be planted by the city as a minimum, but we know with all the other work being done by developers and other people, that will probably end up being anything up to 6,000 trees per year. Some of the comments I think are quite valid about the species of trees. I did articulate this during the actual briefing before it went out to public comment, to make sure that we don't put trees in suburbs that were never grown there in the first place. So to try and to keep and grow back what was actually in the original vegetation is what I'm in support of. I'm also supportive of the fact that administration will also look at trying to create not just trees, but also put in possibly the bushes and other undergrowth as well, because as we know, give it 10 years, a tree becomes quite tall, and then you lose some of the benefits that some of these trees are doing, especially along our road corridors. Initially, they are being there for noise pollution, visual pollution of some of people's front yards. Once those trees get up to 10 or 15 years old, we need to then obviously come in and backfill those open areas with some sort of bush and other things in there. So I'm super supportive of the program. It is a very expensive program over the life of the project. We agreed with that before it went out to public consultation. But I support that cost because I think it's important for us in the long term to create the avenues of trees that will be there even when people start to knock over their existing dwellings, rebuild and the like. And we're seeing some of that, as we just saw in the previous item, that an existing fellowship building is going to be knocked over and rebuilt, but at least any trees on the medium or in the road reserve will actually remain in place, which goes to what Councillor Savitten was talking about. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be very brief. I support the recommendation. This strategy is just common sense. Heat sinks are very much a concern within the community. You can actually literally feel the heat sinks on many days as you drive through them, or the heat islands, I should say. The need for the strategy becomes even more important, particularly on the coastal strip, given the heavy urbanisation that we're currently seeing. The average block can be in the vicinity of 320 to 330 square metres. It makes it near impossible to plant a tree on that property. Many plants within the properties of that size are actually in pots, of course, and of course they certainly aren't trees. If they are stunted trees, miniature trees. This particular heavy or high density urbanisation will no doubt continue up the coastal strip into the newer estates within Eglinton, which emphasises the need even more for a strategy of this kind to be proceeded with. We can't expect, unfortunately, due to practical considerations, residents to play an active role in terms of their own properties in these small subdivisional blocks. The other aspect of the matter is that these trees, the best trees of course, to provide shade are proper shade-bearing trees. Sure, there's a higher cost in maintaining them, particularly on council verges, because often the branches will extend, of course, above the road surface proper, which raises the issue of concerns about trucks and buses and what have you, clipping them or damaging them. But of course, we don't have the same problems that the inner city westerners have with their streets, of course, where the shade-bearing trees are planted above overhead power lines, which of course require 6-monthly pruning of all the trees in the lovely Vista streets. So yes, a common sense strategy, and one that certainly is worthy of adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Yes, Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. In my opinion, this policy is the most important policy the city will have. The indisputable evidence of the importance of addressing the heat island effect cannot be underestimated. The social, environmental, and economic benefits need to be communicated to all and become an intricate part of society. Only once a clear understanding of these benefits are widely known and understood by everyone, from developers, businesses, governments at all levels, and importantly, every individual, will the particular visions and goals and strategic elements be able to be truly implemented. There are so many elements to this vital environmental issue, and this policy means, as a city, we have a starting point, and vitally, that vision. This policy, like the urban forest, will need to be adjusted, pruned, and grow along with our community. Thank you to everyone concerned in putting up this policy, and to everyone who will ensure this policy goes forward and creates a better space for future generations. I would like to add tonight a wonderful saying, and excuse me, I might just get this one wrong, by Rabindranath Tagore. The one who plants trees, knowing that he will never sit in its shade, has at least started to understand the meaning of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Well, with no speakers against, I think we can go straight to the vote. If we can vote for this, please. and that was unanimously passed. I intend to vote on block PSO2, PSO3, PSO4. Who would like to move that?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I did raise my hand earlier when Councillor Miles said that he would like to ask a couple of questions as well. I wanted to ask a question, subject to your consent, of course, about PSO2, the Alkimos-Eglinton Development Contribution Plan, if I may, please.
Councillor Baker, questions are fine. Can we just have a mover and seconder and then we'll go to the questions?
I'll move. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. And who would like to second? Thank you. Councillor Baker, if you'd like to speak to it and
Yes.
ask questions.
Yeah, certainly. Obviously, I endorse the recommendation, of course. I've moved it. But once again, as elected members may recall, on Tuesday night last week at the briefing session, I asked a couple of very pointed questions. The first was in relation to the two marinas which appear in the master plan scheme plan, two marinas on the coast of Eglinton. Those marinas are depicted on in the diagram on page 80 of the agenda. They're duplicated elsewhere. That's the first question. I had actually raised this with Emile privately just before tonight's meeting, and I would like to confirm, or I have confirmed, whether or not there is a developer who has advocated these marinas, because they're on this plan, of course. And if so, who is the developer and what are the developer's intentions? Just that question. And the other one, once again, is why is it that the plans for the Alkimos-Eglinton Development Contribution Plan report, the actual plans proper, the maps, so to speak, name the suburbs of Eglinton correctly and Alkimos, yet name other suburbs which aren't suburbs in the estates, namely Shorehaven and Spears? So that was another question I asked on Tuesday night, which has not been answered.
Okay, Councillor Baker, it's about the developer contribution plan, but I will, where's Emile? Mr Van Hayden, if you could respond to that, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mayor. In relation to the first question, the marinas are shown in the local structure plan for that area, as well as the district structure plan for that area. So because that's reflected in the approved structure plans, that's why we are showing those. We did approach the developer as part of the preparation of our coastal management plan, and they confirmed that they are intending still to develop that within the next 10 years. So we made a decision to show that, and I also just want to reiterate that the state government is reviewing the district structure plans at the moment. So again, that will be looked at as part of that process. In terms of the map showing the landowners, that is page 89. The intent of that map is to show the developers that form part of the DCP. So the intent of that is not to show the actual suburbs, but to show the landowners.
Thank you, Mr Van Halen. Do you want to speak any more to this item or not, Councillor Baker?
I'll be very brief. It's a very good plan. There's a lot of forward planning, of course, in these sorts of schemes, of course, as we appreciate. And, this is the future, and who knows where we're going to be in 20 years' time, a possible marina or marinas in 10 years, 15 years. The place is going ahead, leaps and bounds. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Deputy Mayor Treby, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm particularly pleased with the reports, and can I say I asked for all of my questions in council forum when it came before us at council forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Mayor. Are we speaking for each particular item or them as a whole?
Them as a whole.
So I'll start off with the Alkimos-Eglinton one. Obviously, looking at the development plan that's been put forward on behalf of the developers through administration to come to us for approval. Some of those cost increases we're understanding to be obviously because of building costs. Some of those costs are 19-20% higher than anticipated last year. We need to, I guess, in some respects, it may be cheaper to build now and still receive the money going forward. So we need to have a look at sometimes bringing some of our infrastructure on early, so those communities can have the infrastructure that they're requesting today. It's very much part of it. With regard to the East Wanneroo cells, cell 1, which is obviously the Ashby tap-in area, a Sinagra area, we know that area is almost fully completed. I think it's very little land that's yet to be sold. There was some, as they say, historic public open spaces within there. I understand that some of those landowners are just trying to negotiate with administration on how that payment will be made. I think in the past it was going to be a credit, but now I think it's better for administration to maybe pay it out so we can move towards closing some of these very old cells down before we start getting into the East Wanneroo proper. You know, we know out the back of Wanneroo there's going to be at least 15 precincts that are coming on. We're going to have another 15 of these developer contribution schemes coming on stream through this council over the next couple of years, 5 years. So to getting rid of some of these older ones, I think is a good achievement if administration can achieve that over the next year or two. And also some of the ones that are further down through the Madley areas and that, because I know that those cells are almost complete, but not quite, because there are some landowners that have no intention of moving off their land or selling their land at this stage. They're just going to leave it to their kids to sort out when they pass over. But with that, I do agree with administration's recommendations and support the items. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Speaker against? Speakers for? Councillor Civic.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll briefly speak on PSO2, just to highlight the fact that these are going to be moving all the time. What we're doing is actually planning for the present and making sure that we're covering the developer contributions to make sure that they're in sync with where we are now. But these will be continually moving as we go on and as further subdivisions occur. So I'm happy with what administration is doing on these. With regards to PSO4, and that's the East Wanneroo cells, we're nearly getting to the end of those, but with the remaining ones, we'll need to look at those and maybe come to hopefully tidy the cells up, move them on, and with whatever is remaining, come to special arrangements at some time in the future. But I'm happy with all the items, and I think administration is doing a very good and creditable job to make sure that they're in tune with the current circumstances. So thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Any speakers against? Speakers for? With no more speakers to the item, I'll just put it to the vote. Thank you. Passed unanimously. Item PSO 5/1022, Local Planning Policies 4.1 and 4.13, Review and Environment Policy. Do I have a mover for this policy? I only did the PSO 4, I didn't do PSO 5. So if you would like to move PSO 5, that'd be good.
Yep, I can move that.
Thank you. Who would like to second it? Thank you. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Would you like to speak to it? Anyone against? Anyone for? I'll move it to a vote. Thank you. And that was passed unanimously. We move on to approval services, PSO 6/1022, preparation of amendment number 196 to District Planning Scheme number 2, resolution of scheme anomalies and part zoning normalisation affecting land in the Curramar South, Tapping North agreed structure plan to 21B areas. Moved Councillor Miles. Who wants to second it? Seconded Councillor Civic. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, thanks, you, Mayor. Look, this is, as it states, abnormalities within zoning that happened a long time ago. I do want to thank administration. I had talks with administration since the briefing session just to discuss how some of those people may have or could be affected. Administration are working with those residents and landowners, I should say, just to make sure that there's no unintended consequences of this resolution and this amendment. Apart from that, it's going out for public comment. Anybody will be able to give in some public consultation during that's any submissions. One of the things that Councillor Huntley and myself were keen, and I know Councillor Civic is to maybe look at modernising the corner store use. Because I think as part of our livable neighbourhoods, our walkable neighbourhoods and creating that village atmosphere, I think we need to try and encourage that if somebody wants to do a corner store of some form, that we encourage that in every possible way through our economic development. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Miers. Councillor Civic, would you like to speak to this?
Just briefly, Mayor, thank you. It's a good report done by administration and planning. It really is a tidying up of the existing zones and certainly trying to work with the people that have some discrepancies in their current zone. So I don't really have much more to add to Councillor Miers other than to say that I support the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Are there any speakers against? Any speakers for? I'll put it to the vote. Thank you. And that's passed unanimously. The next item on the agenda is PSO 8-1022, which is the proposed repeal of the City's Extractive Industries Local Law 1998. Do I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Baker. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Baker, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. The rationale, of course, for the repeal is set out in the report associated with this agenda item. The gist of it is, look, we don't need these local laws because there are other bodies of law that can be used in appropriate circumstances to achieve the same outcome. The same applies, of course, in relation to the Science Local Law, which has been deferred, of course, and also the Private Property Repeal Local Law. But, of course, the one question that I've been asked is, however, even though the laws, I think all the laws will be repealed within 14 days of the repeal being gazetted, what happens to any pre-existing factual scenarios that, for example, occur today? How will they be prosecuted, given that whilst they may constitute a breach of the local laws that we are now repealing, they may not be smack bang, so to speak, in breach of another provision in another body of law, which may not cover the factual scenario.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. I'll just put that to Mr Berkeley-Hill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, there was a full review done of the extractive industries local law and compared against existing other laws that would cover it, and the matter was considered also by the team as well. So they're confident that there's no further need to have that law.
Supplementary, please, ma'am.
Yes, Councillor Baker.
So to put it another way, so we may not be aware of certain factual scenarios here tonight, of course, in terms of behaviour or conduct or what have you. The management of property may give rise to a breach of the current local laws regarding private property. But what you're saying is, I gather that the other laws, the other bodies of law, state or local, primarily state, they will cover every hypothetical factual scenario that could have arisen, that could otherwise have been prosecuted under all the various local laws that we are going to repeal, please.
Thank you. Mr Berkeley-Hill.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. I'm not sure that the City could ever foresee every single possible thing that could arise. I think a sensible sort of view of what the existing local law was compared to other schemes and other regulatory instruments was considered. But I don't think the City could ever put its hand on its heart and say it's covered every potential hypothetical that could ever exist.
Thank you. Councillor Baker, do you want to speak any further to this item?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'm in support of repealing any of these sort of local laws, but Councillor Baker did sort of prop my ears up with one of the questions. I think we actually have quite a few limestone quarries, sand quarries, and that possibly were approved under this extractive industry local law. I'm assuming, for the benefit of those that may want to listen, that those laws are still active while that, because it is a condition of them extracting sand, soil, or whatever it is, this law would only not be in place for any new applications. Is that my understanding, Mr. Berkeley Hill?
Mr. Berkeley Hill?
For you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, for you, Mayor Aitken. That was wildly wrong. My apologies, Mayor Aitken. I imagine that once the local law is de-gazetted, that local law's enforcement ceases, but I'll just defer to the Director of Planning and Sustainability, as I imagine in regards to extractive industry, he will be relying on other planning conditions and other laws to recover the same control that may have existed where the planning condition referred to an extractive industry local law.
Mr. Dixon?
Through you, Mayor, that is my understanding also, that if there is a development approval in place, which is the case with most of, if not all of the licences that were granted through the extractive industries local law, that the development approval will remain in place, and that's our ability to ensure enforcement and compliance with all the requirements of the development application.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Councillor Miles, do you want to speak any more to this item as a seconder?
I think, just to clarify then, I just want to clarify what Mr. Dixon indicated there. So if we've put conditions on through planning for somebody to extract whatever it is they're extracting, and it refers to our extractive industry local law, which is no longer there, so you're saying that there's another act, I'm assuming a WA Government Act, that would automatically be put in place once we repeal this local law?
Mr. Dixon?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, in parallel with any licence that was issued under the extractive industries local law, there is also a development application that is in place. And that's essentially why we're recommending that this extractive industries local law be repealed, because it's a duplication. So if there is a development application in place, they typically cover similar conditions that are in place for the extractive industries licence. We don't need both. We can ensure compliance with the conditions of the development approval to ensure any remediation or any conditions are enforced.
Councillor Miles?
No, thank you. That answered the question. Thank you, Mr. Dixon.
Are there any speakers against? Speakers for? Okay, I'll put it to the vote. Thank you. This was carried. Councillor Sangalli voted against. Thank you. We move to item PS 1022, proposed private property repeal of local law 2022. Do I have a mover for this item? I'll move Councillor Rowe, seconded Councillor Miles. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to move this item, and satisfied that the matters that are addressed under the private property local law will be subsequently addressed by other frameworks that are there. In moving this item, I do think it's worth crediting Matthew Piggott's team. I know a number of my CRMs are about properties that are either in disrepair, a dilapidated state, or something that requires the investigation of the environmental health officers. Those are also CRMs that require multiple follow-ups and a high level of attention, and I know the responses that have always come back to me personally have been detailed, patient, and Matthew's always had the time to explain the various reasons why things take time. So I just wanted to personally credit him on this particular item tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Look, totally in support, as I said previously, in removing red tape, removing unnecessary local laws. This is obviously then is good that we're then supporting our administration, because there's less that they have to impose through our local laws. Yes, they have to police state laws that are falling under their particular portfolios, but it means that we don't have to then maintain our own local law in this area, just like the previous one. So totally in support. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Speakers for? Councillor Baker.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. The other point too, which is interesting, is that the existing local law, which is of course still in force today, has been substantially amended over the years, particularly in 2016 on 28 July. Basically, it's been gutted anyway, and what's left in the Act, in the local laws is covered, well, easily covered by other areas of the law anyway. So, once again, common sense, clean out the dead red tape, so to speak, and obviously the less red tape the better, but this is basically dormant, inactive, essentially useless red tape. The less red tape the better for small business. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Speakers against? Speakers for? If I've no one else speaking to this item, I'll put it to the vote. Could you please vote, councillors? That was passed unanimously. So item ASO 1-1022, petition 01-822, request for traffic management scheme on Beachside Parade, Yanchep between Zamia Rise and Templetonia Boulevard. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Baker. You move for this item?
Yes, I think Councillor
And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Coetzee. Councillor Baker, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thanks very much, Madam Mayor. I was a bit disappointed that the number of vehicles, or the usage of vehicles, the number of vehicles and the speed of vehicles didn't seem to truly reflect what the community believe is the true stats, so to speak, but I assume that machines don't lie, of course. Well, they don't make mistakes, we're told. Although you could say like hell they don't. But in any event, I see that admin is being requested to make further traffic counts on the completion, it says, on the completion of Marmion Avenue, on completion of the extension of Marmion Avenue and the opening of the train station, the Yanchep train station. I can understand the train station being a catalyst for a further traffic movement study, but the extension of Marmion Avenue, is that referring to the extension to the train station only, or the extension further north beyond the train station?
Councillor Baker, I'll just put that through to Mr Singh and ask if he has a response for it. Thank you, Mr Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The extension actually is going to another road which is going to run east-west, which will connect Two Rocks Road with the train station.
Yep.
So there are a couple of roads which mentioned in this report. One is north-south link, which is Marmion. There's going to be east-west link. Once those roads are built, the report mentions that traffic patterns will readjust after that.
Supplementary?
Thank you, Mr Singh. Yes, Councillor Baker.
Well, that paragraph 2 in the recommendation, once again, basically says that admin will have another look at it and do further traffic counts upon the opening of the Yanchep rail station and also upon the extension of Marmion Avenue. I think it's fair to say that it's likely that the opening of the Yanchep rail station will occur first. What is the likely date for the extension as noted in the recommendation? What is the likely completion date? Is it 2024, 25? Thanks.
Mr Singh, would you like to respond to that?
Through you, Mayor, I may have to defer that to Mr Dixon. I think he's more close to the information about the opening of Yanchep train station.
Thank you, Mr Dixon.
Madam Mayor, 2023, I'm not sure of an exact date within 2023, I think towards the end of 2023, but I will confirm for Council.
Thank you, Mr Dixon. The CEO would like to speak.
Through the Mayor, my understanding, I think it's April 2024 is the planned moving of the rail cuts on the track.
Thank you. Do you want to speak to this item any further, Councillor Baker?
No, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Coetzee, would you like to speak to this item?
I've been on holiday too long. Pressed the wrong button. I am also not so happy about the outcome of this report. I do, however, hope that the people that goes above 80 kilometres per hour on that road do listen somehow to this meeting we are having tonight and do go a little bit slower there. And I do also hope, and I think I've spoken to Mr. Aminder Singh about this, also the construction vehicles rather to take Templetonia Boulevard to the train station and to the Marmion upgrade as well. And let's hope in the next 2 years things will change there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coetzee. Are there any speakers against? Any speakers for? If there are no more speakers, I'll put this to the vote. Thank you, councillors. It's been passed unanimously. Move on to item ASO2 1022, tender number 2206 for the Clarkson Youth Centre building upgrades. Please be advised that we have a confidential attachment, and should there be any discussion required for the confidential attachment, then the doors must be closed and members of the public exit the chambers. Do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Miles. Seconder, Councillor Civic. Thank you. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I was happy to see that the tender came in at the budgeted outcome, which is really good because we have struggled to have some of our tenders come in on our budget outcomes, on our budget frameworks. I know the youth centre's been around for a long time up there, and it is much need of these upgrades, and I look forward to seeing it start.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Civic, would you like to speak to this item?
Just briefly, Mayor, yeah, look, accepting the recommendation, I think AE Hoskins are a pretty good builder, and I look forward to it. It's within the budget, as Councillor Miles has said, and also we've got $500,000 from Lotteries West in terms of budgeting for this particular item, so happy to endorse or second it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Are there any speakers against? Speakers for? With no speakers for, I'll move this. Would their fellow councillors like to vote, please? And that was an absolute majority. Everyone supported that item. I go to Assets and Maintenance, item AS03 1022, tender 22078, Mindari Breakwater Management Works. Who would like to move this item, please? Councillor Miles, and second it, Councillor Baker. Thank you. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. The report pretty much outlines what we're intending to do with that breakwater. It has been a steady process of rebuilding it and getting it higher and making it safe. Obviously, during our winter storms, we do get quite a bit of blowback from limestone being thrown up onto the road. It is usually what's been settled at the base of the current marina wall, and seeing that we're doing those works and maintaining it'll turn out quite well in the long term, and obviously give those homes along there some protection from some of the buffeting they currently get, because the new wall is significantly higher from the old one. And I do like the fact that the contractor has stated that they will do these works next year. They won't be doing them during summer, which is probably best, and they are going to be doing them through the winter break.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Baker, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, well, this agenda item solely relates to the acceptance of the tender, although part of the report goes into the history of the construction of this breakwater, and also I think at the last briefing session, of course, we were given a brief history as to the history of the ownership of the breakwater by Assets Director Harminder Singh, and also how it was that this major maintenance liability come to somehow fall into our lap in due course. But that's history. Yes, well, the tender, of course, is a very reputable company, of course, carrying on business. It's at least based at Bibra Lake. They have a proven track record of performance. There's no issue there. The only downside of this is that I still lament that either 10 years ago or 8 years ago, what have you, that further proper consideration was given to using granite as the stone for the outer armour. Sure, it's more expensive, but I've said it so many times, it could be a case of penny wise, pound foolish. But yes, I endorse the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Any speakers against? Any speakers for? Councillor Civic.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Really only to add that point number 3 is very important in the whole scale of this. I mean, there's, overall in 2 stages over $7 million in total cost for that, and hopefully that discussions with the state government, I mean, I see it that really on the ocean is of grave responsibility to the state government. So to explore any avenue for further funding on this, I think, is imperative. But other than that, certainly the breakwater definitely needs a lot of work doing to it, and I'm in favour of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savitton. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Thank you, Councillor Sangalli.
I'm very happy to support this as well. As we all know, the works are desperately needed to be done. I'm glad to see administration have included some extra parking in there. As we know, beach parking at the best of times is always hard to find. And I'm very happy to see that administration have also noted that and recognise that this is not just a swimming beach, it's actually a surfing beach, therefore its utilisation in the car park is all year round and not just the summer months, so I'm very pleased to see that as well. I do, however, flag that probably within about 2 years we're probably going to be asked for more parking in that area, given that a 7-storey apartment building is proposed for the block directly across the road from it, and as we know at the moment there's very little on-street parking anywhere within Mindarie. So I will flag that possibly in 2 years' time we will need more parking.
Thank you, Councillor Sangalli. Any speakers against? Speakers for? If there are no more speakers, we'll go straight to the vote. Thank you. And that was passed 100% by everyone. I move on to CPO 11022, the disbandment of the Wanneroo BMX Working Club. Who would like to move that? Councillor Wright, and second it, Councillor Savitton. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Even the word disbandment is in the title. It shouldn't be looked as a bad thing. We're tidying loose ends with our working group, and the club is happy, and this was the club that initiated this as a recommendation from that working group. Due to obviously successfully securing the funding from the new federal government and the local member Tracy Roberts, but also the Mayor, myself, Councillor Miles, Councillor Savitton, and also with the backing of the council to be able to amend those terms of reference, enabled us to have that real conversation of where the club should be going. And obviously now with securing that has enabled the club to start with the works. And they are very excited to be able to have that. So in the meantime, we've decided to disband the working group for the time being until the club comes to the council again to ask us for our support for relocating. But in the meantime, with their new facilities, they are happy where they are, and we look forward to supporting them in that position for the remainder of their new term of lease. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Savitton, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, look, in agreement with the disbandment of the BMX Club at this point in time, remembering that I guess their lease comes up in 2024 with two 5-year options, and 10 years will go by very, very quickly. But the secured funding will help to establish them in terms of being able to continue their operations for at least 10 years. But I wouldn't want the BMX Club to rest on their laurels, as I wouldn't want council also to do so, because I think a new home for them in the future would be of paramount importance. But for the time being, I think we just need to let them relax and enjoy their facilities, and allow the club to grow and use the funding that they have to better improve the site. So I'm happy with the recommendation, but I think we need to look at this maybe sooner than later to ensure that they have a direction and their club can continue in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savitton. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Thank you, Councillor Coetzee.
Thank you, Jordan. Right? Me too. You missed me. No, it took a long time for this club to get where they are now, so I can't wait for the upgrades. I would love to have a ride there at some stage.
Thank you, Councillor Coetzee. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Thank you, Councillor Miles.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This was one of those working groups that had definitely outlasted or outstayed its need. And I remember when I was back in council in 2007, and I was on that particular working group then, and the same discussions that we were talking about back in 2007 were being talked about when I came back on council in 2017. And I just could not believe that it had not progressed any further far past the existing site. The lease with the terms of reference changing, Councillor Wright is correct. That gave the council the ability to be able to give them that long-term standing lease. When they got that 10-year lease, they could actually manage the property better. They were able to get the $1 million out of the federal campaign of our former Mayor, Tracy Roberts, now member for Pearce, and they will be spending that money very wisely, and it will be very effectively spent on that site. And whilst this is a freehold site that the city owns, it's not going anywhere. If at any time in the future, past that 10 years or 15 years, whatever it may be, and they move or relocate, the city is still going to be the owner of the land. So we're not losing anything. It'll just be worth a lot more money in 10 or 15 years' time. And I think that the club themselves will be able to articulate when it's time to move, because I think they will get larger. They are already a very, very secure club. They have people that have gone on to the Olympics and won Olympic medals from that site, and we have supported them throughout that time. So disbanding the working group just means that the group will be able to work more effectively with administration, as opposed to coming through a group that has councillors sitting on it and can sometimes be a little bit jargony, and sometimes can be a little bit more slower pace at delivery. So I think it's a good idea to disband. I don't like the word. I think Councillor Wright's there is correct, but I also look forward to the fact that we will be building a new BMX facility up in Alkimos. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Speakers for.
Question, Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Baker.
Thanks. My question to the Chair is to the CEO, I think. I'm not sure. Of course, reference has been made to the fact that our federal member for Pearce committed a substantial sum towards the improvement of this BMX track. Just for the record, I appreciate, of course, obviously the land's owned by the city. That commitment, was that given by the federal government to the city of Wanneroo or to the BMX club itself, or the club itself to utilise, expend, etc., etc.?
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Mr Sims.
I might have to ask the Director of Committee in place, because I don't think we've seen the funding agreement, so I suspect it's not being provided to the city of Wanneroo. But I'll just check with Mrs Terrelink whether the funding is being provided directly to the club.
Thank you, Mr Sims. Ms Terrelink.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Certainly we haven't been in any discussions with the federal government about a funding agreement. I think, though, it's possible that there may be more movement on funding agreements once the federal government has another look at its budget. But our understanding is certainly that the money will be going directly to the club.
Thank you, Ms Terrelink. Any speakers against? Speakers for? I'd like to speak for this. The club, the BMX club themselves, have shown strong leadership. They've shown strong advocacy to build what they're building there, and they're building a really fantastic community facility where they have Olympians coming through. It is an Olympic sport, and it's really great to have this here, and I'm really happy to have it. And as we don't need the working group anymore, that's okay, because we have a strong leadership in a secure club to lead this sport further. Thank you. And if there are any speakers for? Okay, I'll move it to the vote. Thank you. Carried unanimously. I move to item CPO2 1022, Rotary Park Play Space Upgrade, Concept Design. Do I have a mover for this? Yes, Councillor Wright. Seconder, yes, Councillor Savitten. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this, please?
Thank you. It feels like Councillor Wright airtime for this part of the meeting, sorry. In regards to the Rotary Park upgrades, I think this is much needed. particularly with the community consultation, obviously had a really good outcome with 127 respondents that also provided some comments too. In regards to the fully enclose of the park, I think this is a good move going forward, particularly with that many young kids that are obviously using the park, and to be able to have that safety and security for both parents and the kids is a good thing. But also creating a bit more harmonisation of the park as well by creating one main entry with a central car park, but also redesigning the spaces to be able to make sure that we're meeting the needs and demands of the local families in the area. I do think this is a good investment from the city into this Rotary Park. It is well used by everyone there. It is probably one of our flagship parks within the city, but also is clearly and evidently utilised quite well. So obviously, even though this was upgraded probably a couple of years ago now, it's obviously needed again because of that heavy usage. So I fully ask my councillors to support this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Civic, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yes, endorsing Councillor Wright's comments, but further to go and listening to Mrs Newton this evening, there are a couple of spots there that are subject to a little bit of flooding here and there, but that should be addressed. But certainly the improvements for this park, people come from outside the city to certainly enjoy this facility, and it's been well used over the years ever since its inception. So I'm really happy that it will be going out to public consultation for 21 days. And I think we should get certainly glowing responses from the community on this, but in terms of upgrading it, etc., looking forward to it. And it's certainly a highlight, one of the highlights within the city of Wanneroo in terms of its use and certainly helping disabled children as well as the community at large. So happy to support and second this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Question, Deputy Mayor Treby. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. By way of preface to the question, this park, when it was first conceived and opened, was called Opportunity Play Space. It was specifically set up for all abilities and for all children. And there was a comment tonight about the Liberty Swing, and that raised a little bit of a concern for me. So the question to potentially, I would imagine, Mrs Cherrling, is that does the park retain those elements that still meet the original intention of it being an opportunity play space for all abilities for all children?
Ms Terrelink, would you like to respond to that? Though I have swung on one of the swings, which is one of the special ones with my granddaughter, so I think they still have it there. But Ms Terrelink, would you like to respond?
Yes, through you, Mayor, yes, the intention is certainly to ensure that the playground retains its all-ability access.
Thank you. Would you like to speak further, Deputy Mayor?
Look, I would, and I think it's, and thank you very much for the confirmation. It's important because the history is actually quite interesting. The Opportunity Play Space, when it was first conceived, in fact was a catalyst for a number of other playgrounds to be constructed across the Perth and Peel regions to provide those services for all children. And that's a unique piece of history that really does sit with Wanneroo, being, and it was, I must admit, a tad on the expensive side when it was first conceived and constructed. And it's outstanding to see that that continued investment will happen to ensure that one of the, and still is, one of the most popular play spaces for families right throughout the year at a very unique location will continue. Very supportive.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Or question? Thank you, Councillor Herridge.
Thanks, Mayor. Touching on everything that's just been said, what is the then opportunity to extend the consult out to those that have already expressed their consultation, just to widen the scope past that 400 metres of the park?
Ms Terrelink?
Through you, Mayor, the intention would be that it would be on our Your Say webpage, so in actual fact others can respond to the consultation, and I would expect that while it's part of our community engagement policy that we do the letter drop, we also do other consultation or do other. We promote the consultation in other ways so that other people in the community can also respond. So we would be promoting it on our social media pages and it would also be on our Your Say webpage so that anyone can actually respond to the consultation.
Thanks, Ms Terrelink. Would you like to speak to the item, Councillor Herridge? Anyone else like to speak against? Or anyone against? For? Councillor Sangali.
I do support this, but I also do have a question just in regards to the consultation. Noting that we do have a kindy close by there, I'm just wondering, are they within the zone for the letter drop? So are those parents aware of what's going on? And secondary to that, there's a primary school quite close by which I doubt would be within the letter drop zone, but do we let the local schools know about the opportunity to actually have some feedback in this or promoting it through their school newsletters as well, so we get that wider feedback from the younger age group that are using it?
Thank you, Councillor Sangali. Ms Terrelink.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, yes, we can certainly ensure that the local schools in that area are informed of the consultation and have the opportunity to respond.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Speakers for. Do you want the right of reply now and close debate, Councillor Wright?
I actually had a question, if I may. It was just
you may ask a question.
Based on Councillor Herridge and Councillor Sangali's comments, is it possible to also get on-site signage? Because I don't think that is in our current community consultation sort of staff. It is, in terms of a QR code or something for residents to do.
Ms Terrelink.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, yes, where the consultation lends itself to having signage on site, we certainly do that now.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Seeing no one has spoken against the item, I put the item to the vote. Thank you. And that was passed unanimously. I move to item CP03 1022, horse exercise provisions, lot 124, timely hostess Muse Marigina. Who would like to move it? Councillor Miles, you can move it, and Councillor Baker can second it. Thank you. Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is an area that's been I've been asked about for a couple of years from some of the residents up there. It was a site that the horse owners have been using because most of the bridle trails sort of end up at this site. And it came about purely because they would like to have had some horse water trough there in place. We then discovered, or administration then discovered, that the site actually was still, in fact, I don't think administration knew the site was in place until the community started asking to use it on an official basis. To actually put this out so we can actually have horse exercise provisions and other animals on this site is actually correct and in line with what that area sold for. Most of those property owners out there are or were horse owners. It was sold, the development was sold by Bill Duffy a long time ago on that proviso, and this area in Timely Hostess Muse was always supposed to be in part for horse training, and I think Bill used to have horses on that property for some time. I'm looking forward to seeing this go forward. I do seek council support for this so we can actually put it in place. I do also acknowledge what Mr Greer stated last week, that it is some parts of this property could possibly looked at for some other future use. It is 7 hectares. That's a large property that the council owns. And it'd be good to be able to see what we can do with it going forward. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Councillor Baker, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, please. I'll be very brief, Mayor. In short, this is a rather unusual parcel of land. It was acquired by the city over 22 years ago or so for cash for valuable consideration back in 1998. $315,000 wasn't chook food, so to speak. But it has been located, at all material times, as I understand it, the lot has been located within the Meadowland Special Rural Zone 08, which is zoned Parks and Recreation. However, as a fact, it's been used as bridle trails, of course, for many, many years. And of course, the city must have known this, of course, and simply acquiesced. I'm not sure whether, when it was zoned Special Rural Zone 08, that whether Parks and Recreation also included, well, equestrian purposes or horse trail purposes, what have you. But in any event, the proposed formal determination, subject to community consultation, will in effect validify, so to speak, the historical use and its future use. There seems to be a need for it. It'll be very interesting to see how dogs and horses often interrelate. I've had, many years ago, I worked in stables for a relative who was a racehorse trainer. He had cattle dogs that were used to keep the horses in check, and yes, they don't really get on very well. But anyhow, the other thing that I thought was very curious was, under the heading financial implications, particularly given that this item is only coming up the agenda tonight, just tonight, given that the budget for 2023 is locked away, done, dusted, etc., there's no room for an extra jam tart, how can it be said that, and I quote, the cost of the community engagement can be funded from existing budget provisions? What's the title or description of the existing budget provisions? Because
thank you, Councillor Baker.
If I could just finish my remarks.
Yep.
Quite a few matters involving local laws have come before the city in the past. We'll be told there's no money in the budget. But this one, from left field, several months after the budget's been set in concrete, it's coming from the funding for the community consultation will come from existing budget provisions. Could I have some clarification?
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Mrs Jennings, would you like to speak to that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Items such as community engagement come from the city's operating budget, and the various areas budget a certain amount for consultation during the year, not necessarily knowing all of them, but there is a budget for community consultation.
Thank you, Ms Jennings. Would you like to speak to this item any further, Councillor Baker?
No, ma'am, it has overwhelming merit, thanks.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Thank you, Councillor Sangalli.
I guess I'll just follow up with the community consultation again. I just want to make sure that on this particular item, we're not just doing a 400 square metre diameter, given that the area is such a large area and the residents are so spread out that we are widening our scope.
Thank you. Ms Terrelink, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you, thank you, Mayor. Taking Councillor Sangalli's point, that's the reason why the recommendation actually refers to consulting with the suburb rather than just a 400 metre radius.
Thank you, Ms Terrelink. Any other questions? Any speakers against? Any speakers for? And on that note, I put it to the vote. Thank you very much. And that was passed unanimously. I'd like to move the next two items on block, which is CSO 11022, the financial activity statement for the period ended the 31st of August, and CSO 21022, which is the warrant of payments. Can I have a move up?
Ma'am, I have two questions. They can be moved in block, but I still have a couple of questions regarding the warrants of payments. Is that okay?
Okay. What I'll do is I'll get Councillor Wright to move it, and you can second it, okay? But please make the questions very quick, and remember that we do have a process to write them in beforehand. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you. I had no comments to add in the report, so quite sound. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Baker, would you like to speak?
Yes, if I can, ma'am. And it's regarding a very serious matter, and I hope it's not being treated with triviality. Very serious matter. Very grave matter indeed. I refer to page 495 of the warrants of payments. I refer to payment number 8021. And of course, this is the payment that was made in the sum of $9,801 for the provision of dog poo bags. I asked this question at the briefing session. Have there been any significant material developments since this crisis was first aired on Tuesday last week? In other words, has that damn blockage in the supply chain been removed, please? I am literally getting emails, several emails every day. Some people are really starting to panic. Thank you.
Mr Singh, could you please respond to Councillor Baker's question?
Thank you, Mayor. An update was provided to council members this afternoon. I'll probably summarise that very quickly. We are experiencing supply chain issues. The last advice we received from suppliers is the next batch of supplies will arrive in Australia on 25th of October, and we're expecting the supplier will deliver those bags to us within the next few days after that. As soon as we get the bags, we'll be out there with our staff to replenish and refill all the dispensers. And the supply will last about 2 months. And we have already placed the order for the next batch for supply of those bags.
Thank you, Mr Singh. Councillor Baker, you have a second question?
Yes, that's a supplementary, please.
No, just a second.
Well, it raises something. You know, this is a development. I didn't read about it this afternoon. I'm sorry I missed it, but I'd just like to ask if it's possible to arrange for the boxes of the bags to be couried to the Civic Centre so that it can act as a distribution point for dog loaders too.
I'm sure Mr Singh has that organised.
Right. Second question?
Quickly.
Yes, I referred to payment number 8582 on page 519 in the sum of $8,760, paid to Limitless Promotions, and the purpose of the payment was for cat and dog straps and tags. Why were they purchased by the city? What are they? Were they subsequently sold or were they simply given away, please?
Madam Mayor, we'll take that on notice.
Okay, any speakers against? Speakers for? Thank you, Councillor Rowe.
I just wanted to note, particularly in relation to the activity statements, the fact that the graphs and the variance descriptions always provide good context and it helps us make good judgments in relation to this item.
Thank you. Any speakers against? Any speakers for? And on that note, I'll move us to the vote for these two items. Thank you. We've passed that unanimously. I'll move on to item CSO 31022, which is the proposed amended commercial terms for the ground lease to the Department of Communities ground lease over Lot 800, Highclere Boulevard, Wanneroo Hepburn Centre. Does anyone have any conflicts? Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just with respect to item CSO 3-10/22, I disclose that I am the chairperson of the Management Committee of the Hepburn Centre. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on this matter might be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. Also in relation to CSO 310/22, I declare that I'm the Vice Chairperson of the Hepburn Centre Board. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. However, I declare that I will consider the matter on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Herridge.
Thanks, Mayor. I also would like to declare impartiality for the same item, CSO 310-22. I disclose that I am a board member of the Hepburn Centre and as a consequence there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you. Can I have a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Seconder? I'll do Councillor Herridge. Thank you. Councillor Rowe, would you like to speak to this item?
Briefly, Mayor, just to outline the number of reasons why I think that it's a fairly straightforward vote in my opinion. The first is that historically the site has always been accustomed to a peppercorn lease. The second, it has a long and strong relationship with both the surrounding community and the wider area. And finally, the level of services that it offers at the Hepburn Centre is quite incredible. And I do obviously express concern about that level of service not being available to the community. Also, thank you to Councillor Miles for his question last week, because as a result of that question, we're able to see a little bit more context in terms of the wide range of services and the benefits that are available to the community at large. So given those factors, I ask for Council's support for this report.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Herridge, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think I need to. James has just, Councillor Rose picked it up very well. I need to add to thanks to Mr Greer for his work and administration on getting this to us tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Herridge. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Thank you, Councillor Baker.
Thanks. I'd like to speak for, of course. I realise that what's being proposed will result in the city losing some $13,500 per annum in rent in view of the peppercorn rental proposed. That's if it's demanded, of course. It's intended to be nominal rent. It is unusual, I suppose, for a department to pay a peppercorn rental, but the bottom line is that, of course, the department is just the overarching body. It's a case where it's the actual ultimate users at the group. The group, as its title is known as the Hepburn Centre, it's a not-for-profit incorporated community group. It was formerly known as the Marangaroo Family Centre. I'm just wondering whether or not, if Mr Greer can assist, does the Hepburn Centre employ any persons, any personnel? He's not here. Perhaps
Mr Baker, we'll have to take that on notice, and Mr Greer will get back to you. Thank you, Councillor Baker. Do you want to speak to this item?
Just complete that question with four more words, I think. Does the centre employ any people, or are there anyone who works at the centre, are they actually working as volunteers? That's the only question. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Baker, and that'll go to Mr Greer. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor. One of the points I wanted to make, just to ensure that the minutes are correct, is under the responsible officer, you've still got acting director. I think we should acknowledge Ms Jennings present here tonight, so I think that needs to be updated for the minutes. But in terms of the actual report, very happy to support the Hepburn Centre. They do some fantastic work. I know I've spoken to Miss Helen Cox at various WBA events, and she does she has a fantastic team down there that work very closely also with No Limits Perth, and should I say also recognise the board as well for their fantastic work in managing the Hepburn Centre too, because it does take a front end back end approach to be able to run an organisation like that. So I do look forward to visiting them in the future, but definitely support this because they provide vital services to the local community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Civic.
Very briefly, Madam Mayor, or Mayor, this is a non-for-profit organisation, and really it should be a peppercorn rent, contrary to what Councillor Baker has said about $13,000 lost in fees. But it is a non-for-profit organisation and should be sponsored by the city to make sure that we look after these non-for-profit organisations. That's really all I have to say. Otherwise, I'm happy with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. And Councillor Miles, would you like to speak to this item? Thank you. To the item.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I did ask that question deliberately last week because I think just to put up a report when there's no context of what the centre does, we here in this room may know, but we got to remember this is all public information. This is going out into the main public, and our residents need to see that we are doing just right, why we are subsidising what would normally be a commercial lease to a not-for-profit sector. Now, I understand that this particular centre does have some good programs operating out of it. I know No Limits Perth does their food supply service out of there 3 days a week, and there are other programs that are being run out of it. The one part of this report I am excited about is the fact that the department is going to do that maintenance work of over $130,000 over the next few years, because we know that that building is old and it probably will need some further work going forward. It is always strange when a department leases a building from a local authority, in my book, and it doesn't pay the full rate. Now, I don't know the funding agreement between the department and the Hepburn Centre. That's up to them and the department. That's not up to us, so it's not worth discussing. But normally, these sort of arrangements are very much out there to what that funding level is. I also do know that these sort of facilities, and there's a number of them all over the state, where the government was attempting to pass these facilities back over to local councils, so the local councils or local governments could actually run them on behalf of the community and probably have other facilities there. So, but on this basis, on reading this report, I'm very happy to support the peppercorn rent area. I do find it strange that department had an officer that wasn't fully au fait with the community centre arrangement in this case, and I'm sure that they will be the ones that obviously have a little bit of egg on their face and it come up. But with that, Mayor, I'm supportive of the idea. I understand what this particular centre's doing, and I'm hoping that this centre obviously will go in other areas as well, because we know that some of those areas down there in the South Ward need other areas of need from mental health, dental work and other ancillary health items. So they are getting their food from there. I'd like to see some other items taken on board, and it's good to see that the Deputy Mayor and two of our councillors are on that board to make that happen and take it forward and grow that centre further. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Miles. Any speakers against? Speakers for? Yes. Councillor Rowe would like to exercise right of reply. Go ahead, Councillor Rowe.
I'm aware, Mayor, that no one has spoken against this, but I just wanted to clarify from my personal view that I don't see this as lost revenue for the city for the reasons that I outlined when I spoke to the item, the fact that it historically has been a peppercorn lease, and that while council agreed to the lease several months ago, I believe, no revenue was generated from that, some 13,000. So I don't see it as a potential loss of revenue from historically. I just see it as an adjustment due to a technical issue on the department side. And I think that's worth mentioning.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. I'll put it to the vote. Thank you. And that's passed unanimously. I go to item CSO 41022, determination of council meeting dates January to December 2023. Can I have a mover for this item, please? Deputy Mayor's moving that one, and Councillor Baker's seconding it. Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak to this?
As much as I'd like to speak at length about the dates of our meeting schedules for next year, I think the report speaks for itself.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Baker, would you like to speak to this?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think I can handle the excitement. That's enough. Thank you.
On that note, I put it to the vote. Thank you. And that's passed unanimously. I go to the Chief Executive Office, and we start with Advocacy and Economic Development, CEO 11022, the Neerabup Industrial Area, Lot 9100 Business Plan. Can I have a mover for this, please? Deputy Mayor, seconder. Mr Savitten, Councillor Savitten.
Every permutation and combination of your name. Francis.
Francis, whatever you like.
Mr Ed.
Councillor Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak?
There's been a lot of demotion and promotion all in the same sentence tonight. And in fact, councillors, I don't know if you noticed, but we actually had another councillor join us this evening, Councillor Morris.
You did.
Twice. Who unfortunately doesn't seem to be with us at the moment. But
he's got to get elected.
If I can just commend Mr Marmion and his team for this report, as the chair of the Neerabup Industrial Area Working Committee, we have received a lot of information and have been fortunate enough to provide a significant amount of guidance to the city to get to this point. This is an enormous opportunity for not only the city, but the residents that live within the city. Yes, this is going to be a major employment centre for both current and future communities. Yes, it's going to provide leading edge and new technologies and new employment opportunities that don't yet exist. For example, I think the Australian Robotics and Automation Centre is, I'd argue, world leading, and it will be world leading. That will be located at Neerabup within the city of Wanneroo, and that's something to be particularly proud about. There are massive opportunities for the city. And it's also probably worthy and worthwhile in just reflecting upon and acknowledging the foresight of councils long past to invest in this area, to develop an employment base and future revenue opportunities for future councils and future business models. So I think it's important to reflect upon the work of council and councillors across the generations, because having that vision sets us up and also sets our community up to benefit from the Neerabup industrial area. And again, thank you, Mr. Marmion and the CEO for his guidance in this area. It's a fantastic report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Civic, would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Neerabup is now getting closer to the time for it to actually come onto the market, and the fact that our northern corridor is growing frenetically, and the fact that East Wanneroo is also going to come online very shortly. The 20,000 job situation most likely and most probably will be a reality. This land for the city is strategically very important. The city has owned the land for many, many years, and with the help of Mr. Steve Marmion and his team, I think we're getting very close to the desired result. It will be a great investment for the city and for all the points that Councillor Treby has made with regards to robotics, etc. Ancillary benefits may also be created from this particular estate. There is further land that can be developed in the future, but certainly this first stage, I'll be watching it excitedly to see how the actual market reacts. And I think for Western Australia, we're doing very, very well on the Australian scene. So the economy is still going well. I look forward to it, and I think for the city, it will be a very good outcome, I'm sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Civic. Speakers against? Speakers for? Yes, Councillor Baker.
Question, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Baker.
Thanks. Just in terms of the report, it's a very good report indeed, don't get me wrong. And also I've looked at the various calculations conducted, of course, but I see that, strictly speaking, the titles for the lots won't be issued until April 2025, in around 2.5 years' time, I think it is. So God knows what's going to happen to the market in the interim period. And of course, that's assuming that that once the titles are issued, that the lots will otherwise be ready to go to market straight away, rather than going to market subject to titles being issued, etc., etc. So yes, hopefully the values of the various lots will improve through time. And as former Councillor Newton said earlier this evening, it may well be that through time we may well elect to retain lots 5, 6 and 15. The bigger lots, particularly 5 and 6, having areas of more than, almost 4,500 metres squared. So good investment. Hopefully the dividends will show, and we perhaps won't be able to actually reap any fruit, so to speak, until at least April 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Speakers against? Speakers for? I'd just like to speak to this item. This is the breaking of the ground and the beginning of a great future with industry at Neerabup and local jobs for local people. It's really exciting times, and I look forward to this beginning as we move forward. Councillors, I'd like you to cast your vote. Thank you. And that was unanimous. I move on to CEO 21022, the Enterprise Risk Management Policy. Deputy Mayor Treby, would you like to move this item?
Again, I think I've just been promoted and demoted, all in the same sense.
And can I have a seconder too, please? I'll give Councillor Wright the seconder. Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak to this? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this is an important policy, but I think it's also worthy of note that risk management is a journey and it's not ever ultimately a destination. And you adopt a risk management framework policy, and an enterprise one looks at the entire organisation and has processes in place where you then have executive and governance level capability of having oversight right across the enterprise of the City of Wanneroo. It's important because that's our role. We have to have line of sight and visibility over all of the areas of risk within the organisation, both current and emerging. It's also worthy of note that this journey has been going now for, I think, some 6 or 7 years, and it's, I think, without peer in local government in this state. We set along this path some time ago, and I think we are now the exemplar, I believe, for the industry. And I think the report that we've been provided this evening has already gone through audit and risk, and it received a fair outing at that in that committee. I thoroughly endorse the report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor. I just think Deputy Mayor Treby has put that beautifully, and I think no comments are needed. Thank you.
Okay, speakers against? Speakers for?
Question, Mayor, please.
Councillor Baker, yes.
Thanks. My question's directed to the CEO. I refer to the policy as it appears, or at least a page within the policy as it appears on page 79 of the agenda. There's a paragraph at the top which is headed with the words, all employees, contractors, consultants. The paragraph goes on to make reference only to employees. It states every employee within the city is recognised as having a role in risk management. This involves vigilance in the identification and ongoing management of risks and participating in the risk management processes. Of course, that particular paragraph proper doesn't mention contractors, which I think surely means third parties to the city, and consultants, but irrespective of that, I think that might be intended, but if that is intended, perhaps the contractors and consultants should be referred to expressly within the actual text proper, rather than just the heading alone. But it's fair to say, I assume, that with all of these cities' formal contracts, particularly those worth several $100,000, there would be a clause in the contract which compels the contractor to comply with all the city's policies to the extent to which they are applicable. Is that the case, Mr. CEO? In particular, health and safety, as we discussed the other day.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. I think that would go through to Mr. CEO.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. As to the extent applicable, acknowledging that the work health and safety legislation is a statutory obligation and a compliance-driven matter. Often the management of the risk is with an officer that might be delivered through a contract.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers against? Speakers for? If there are no more speakers to the item, I put it to the vote. Thank you. And that was passed unanimously. We have item 9, we have no motions on notice. Item 10, we have no urgent business. And item 11, Mr. CEO would like to declare.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to declare a financial interest in item CR 0110 22, starting on page 597 of this evening's agenda. The nature of my interest is financial, as it relates to the employment contract I hold with the City of Wanneroo in the position of Chief Executive Officer, and the clauses within that contract that relate to an annual performance review, which Council will consider this evening, and I will leave the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr CEO. As item 11 is confidential and that Council needs to move into a confidential session to discuss this item CRO 1-1022 under the terms of the Local Government Act 1995, section 523 in brackets 2, we need to move to go. So thank you, Deputy Mayor, and seconded. So we'll go into a confidential session now. Are all those in favour?
Who did you call second?
Mr Vitten. Well, we will. Can we vote for closing the door on our little bits of paper pad things here? That's ordinary council meeting. Councillors, can you cast your vote, please? And that was passed unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Now that the meeting is resumed, we have had total support with the councillors in the room to the recommendation that Council 1 endorses by absolute majority the report prepared by Ms Helen Hardcastle for the CEO's 2021-22 performance review set out at attachment 2 and accepts the recommendations within and A, confirms that the CEO has again demonstrated his performance requirements having achieved the agreed key performance indicators. B, notes that the overall performance feedback received demonstrates that he has maintained his consistent high performance during the 2021-22 year. C, notes that there was no material corporate issue identified that warranted further examination. D, notes that the CEO has met or exceeded the agreed 2021-22 key performance indicators, and E, adopts the key performance indicators for the 2022-23 period as detailed in this report. 2, notes that Council has appointed Mrs Helen Hardcastle, local government consultant, to facilitate and undertake the CEO performance review for the 2021-22 review period. 3, requests the Executive Manager of Governance and Legal to engage the services of Mrs Helen Hardcastle, local government consultant, to assist Council to conduct the annual performance review of the Chief Executive Officer, Mr Daniel Sims, for the remainder of his contract term. 4, authorises the Mayor to execute any required legal documentation to give effect to the recommendations in the report prepared by Mrs Helen Hardcastle for the CEO's 2021-22 performance review as set out in attachment 2. Daniel, congratulations. That was moved by Mayor Linda Aitken, and it was seconded by Deputy Mayor Brett Treby. And passed unanimously. We all passed it unanimously. Okay, item 12, the date of the next meeting. The next council members' briefing session has been scheduled for 6 p.m. on 1st of November 2022 to be held at the Council Chamber, Civic Centre, 23 Dundebar Road, Wanneroo, and the closure is at 8:32 p.m.